Jason had never expected to be on a spaceship, let alone one that was about to make history. He had grown up on Earth working as a mechanic in a small town. His life was simple, filled with the noise of tools and the hum of engines. But today, everything was different. Today he found himself aboard the starship Vanguard. Traveling through the stars to a distant galaxy, the Vanguard was part of Earth's growing fleet, built to help other species in need and to explore the farthest reaches of the universe. Earth had become a powerful force in the galaxy, surprising everyone with its rapid advancements. Jason had been chosen for a special mission to help repair the ship's engines, a job he was more than qualified for. He never imagined that he would soon cross paths with someone who would change his life forever, the alien princess. Elora was the daughter of the mighty Zaltar Empire. Her people were known for their fierce warriors and their advanced technology, but they were also known for their pride. Elora was no ordinary princess. She had once been a skilled fighter, leading her people in battles against invaders from other galaxies. But during one such battle, her legs were severely injured, leaving her unable to walk. Her people saw this as a great tragedy, not just for her, but for their entire empire. In their eyes, a princess who could no longer fight was a symbol of weakness, but Elora was far from weak. Despite her disability, she was still a force to be reckoned with. She had been sent on a diplomatic mission to strengthen alliances with Earth, a task that required both brains and bravery. Her journey had brought her aboard the Vanguard, where she was being treated for her injuries. She had always been proud of her independence, but now she was at the mercy of others, forced to rely on their help. Jason first saw her as she walked into the medical bay. He was busy adjusting a power conduit when he heard footsteps behind him. Turning around, he was startled to see a young woman, her delicate features framed by long, dark hair. She wore a simple yet elegant robe that marked her as royalty, but it was her eyes that caught his attention. They were a deep shade of violet, and they seemed to glow with a mixture of strength and sadness. She had a cane in her hand, and though she moved with grace, Jason could tell she was in pain. She walked slowly, her steps cautious, but there was a fire in her eyes that made Jason feel like he was standing in front of a lioness. "Are you the mechanic?" she asked, her voice soft but commanding. Jason nodded. "Yes, I'm Jason. How can I help you, princess?" Elora smiled, but it was a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm not here for repairs, Jason. I'm here because my ship needs your help." Jason blinked, confused. "Your ship?" "Yes, my personal shuttle was damaged during our journey." "I need you to fix it," she said, her tone no nonsense. Jason hesitated. He had worked on plenty of ships before, but nothing like this. "I'll do my best. Do you have the specifications?" Elora nodded and handed him a data pad. "Here, I trust you can handle it." Jason took the pad, but before he could turn away, he couldn't help but notice how quiet she had become. Her posture was still regal, but there was a certain vulnerability in her eyes. She was a princess, but she didn't seem like one. "You don't have to do this alone, you know," Jason said, feeling a strange pull to offer his help. "If you need anything, just let me know." Elora's eyes softened for a moment, but then she looked away, as if dismissing his offer. "I'm not used to needing help, but I appreciate the offer, Jason." Jason watched as she turned and walked slowly away, her cane tapping lightly on the floor. He couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness for her. Here was a princess, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and yet she walked as if she carried the weight of the universe on her shoulders. Her disability, once a symbol of strength and resilience, had become something she had to hide behind a mask of pride. As he turned back to his work, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this princess than met the eye. He had seen the way she moved, the way she carried herself. There was a strength in her that went beyond her royal title. And as he continued to work, he found himself thinking about her more than he had expected. There was something about her quiet sadness that resonated with him. Later that day, as Jason finished his work on the shuttle, he saw Elora again. She was standing by the observation window, staring out at the stars. Her expression was unreadable, but Jason could tell she was lost in thought. He approached her cautiously, unsure of what to say. "The shuttle's fixed," he said softly. Elora turned to face him, her violet eyes meeting his. "Thank you, Jason. You've done more than I expected." "I'm just doing my job," Jason replied, feeling a little awkward. Elora nodded, but then her gaze softened. "You're different from the others, Jason. I don't know what it is, but you make me feel like I'm more than just a princess with a broken body." Jason didn't know what to say to that, but as he looked at her, he realized something. This princess, this strong and proud warrior, was not as invincible as everyone thought. She was just like him, struggling with her own battles, trying to find a way to be more than what others expected of her. "I'll always be here if you need someone to talk to," Jason said, his voice sincere. Elara's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "I'll remember that." As she walked away, Jason couldn't help but feel that this encounter, this simple gesture, had just started something that would change both of their lives forever. The days on the Vanguard passed slowly, but Jason's life had changed. It wasn't the ship or the stars or the endless stretches of space that filled his thoughts. It was Princess Elora. Despite being surrounded by advanced technology and skilled officers, Jason's mind often wandered to her quiet, graceful presence. Every time he passed her in the hallways, he couldn't help but notice how she held herself always composed, but there was a sadness in her eyes, a quiet storm that only a few ever saw. She would smile, nod politely, but it was clear that she carried the weight of her past with her. Jason wasn't sure why he cared so much. She was a princess, a powerful figure in her empire, and he was just a mechanical worker in the vast machine of the Vanguard. But something about her made him feel like he could do more. Something inside him wanted to help her. It was one afternoon, while he was working on the ship's engine systems, that he saw her again. This time, Elora was alone in the corridor, leaning against the wall for support. Her cane was beside her, but she wasn't using it. Jason could tell she was struggling to stand. He quickly moved toward her. "Princess Elora, are you all right?" Jason asked, his voice full of concern. Elora turned to face him, her expression masking her discomfort. "I'm fine, Jason. Just a little tired," she said. But Jason could hear the faint strain in her voice. "I don't think you're fine," Jason said gently. "You don't have to do everything by yourself." Elora's lips twitched into a small smile, but it quickly faded. "I'm not used to needing help," she admitted quietly. "I've spent my whole life fighting, leading, being strong for my people." Jason nodded, understanding her struggle. He had always been taught that strength came from standing alone, fighting your battles, doing things yourself. But looking at Elora, he knew that true strength didn't always mean carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders alone. "I understand," Jason said. "But sometimes it's okay to let others help you." Elora looked at him for a long moment, her violet eyes reflecting something deep inside. "I'm not sure I know how to let others in," she whispered. Jason felt a twinge of sadness for her. "You don't have to do it alone anymore. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'll be here." Elora's eyes softened. She seemed to consider his words carefully before nodding slightly. "Thank you, Jason. I'll keep that in mind." Before she could turn to leave, Jason reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver pendant. It wasn't much, just a simple piece of metal shaped into a circle with a small engraving of Earth's flag. He had made it himself during his free time. It was nothing fancy, but something about it felt right. "I made this," he said, holding it out to her. "It's a small gift, but maybe it'll remind you that you're not alone." Elora stared at the pendant for a moment, her gaze fixed on the simple object. Her fingers brushed lightly against it, and Jason saw something change in her eyes. She took the pendant from his hand, her grip delicate but firm. "You made this for me?" she asked softly. Jason nodded. "It's just a small gesture. I know you don't like being seen as weak, but you've shown me a strength I can't even imagine. I just wanted to give you something to remind you of that." Elora's lips parted as if she were about to speak, but the words seemed to catch in her throat. She blinked quickly, her eyes glistening with emotion. For a moment she didn't say anything. Then, with a soft smile, she placed the pendant around her neck. "I will always carry this with me," she said, her voice steady but filled with Something unspoken. Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth spread through him. It wasn't just the gesture that mattered, it was the way Elora accepted it. She wasn't used to kindness from others, especially not someone like him, but she had taken it without hesitation. "Thank you, Jason," she said again, more softly this time. "You've done something for me that no one else has." Jason wasn't sure how to respond. He had never been good with words, but he knew that Ilora's gratitude meant more than any thanks he could give in return. The silence between them was comfortable, as if something deeper had shifted between them. "Any time," Jason replied, his voice quiet but sincere. Elora smiled, a true smile this time. It was small, but it lit up her face, erasing some of the weight that had been there before. "I'm not sure how to express it, but this gift, it means more than you can imagine." Jason smiled back, feeling a warmth that had little to do with the ship's artificial lights. It wasn't just the pendant, it was the connection. For the first time, Elora seemed to truly see him. Not just as a mechanic, not just as someone who fixed things, but as a person who could offer more than just tools or repairs. As Elora walked away, her steps a little more confident, Jason couldn't help but feel that something had changed. He had given her a small gift, but it felt like it had done more than just that. Maybe, just maybe, it had opened a door between them, a door that would lead to something greater. And as Elora disappeared into the hallway, Jason smiled to himself. He didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time, he felt like he had made a difference. The days aboard the Vanguard continued to pass, and Jason found himself becoming more involved in the life of Princess Elora. Their brief interactions had begun to grow into something more meaningful. Though Elora still carried herself like the proud princess she was, there was a quiet shift in her demeanor whenever Jason was near. The walls she had so carefully built around herself were starting to show cracks, and Jason couldn't help but notice. It wasn't that they talked every day. They didn't. Elora was a royal, and Jason was just a mechanic. Their duties often kept them in different parts of the ship. But whenever their paths crossed, there was a sense of familiarity now. A small smile here, a nod there, a word or two exchanged about something mundane. But each word seemed to hold more weight than it had before. Jason was surprised by how much he had come to care for Elora. She wasn't like the others he had met in his life. She wasn't just the princess of a powerful empire. She was a person, a woman who had been through more than anyone could imagine. And yet, despite all that, she still had the courage to keep going, to keep fighting for her people and her beliefs. One afternoon, Jason was working in the engine room, making some adjustments to the cooling system, when he heard a soft knock on the door. He looked up, expecting one of the crew members to come in, but instead it was Elora. She stood in the doorway, her violet eyes searching the room. "Jason, may I speak with you for a moment?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. Jason wiped his hands on a rag and stood up. "Of course, Princess. What's on your mind?" Elora stepped into the room, her cane tapping lightly against the floor. She had become more comfortable using it, but Jason could tell she still tried to avoid relying on it too much. She stood for a moment, glancing at the engine parts around them before turning to face him. "I've been thinking," Elora began, her gaze focused on the floor. "About everything you said? About not doing everything alone?" Jason smiled gently. "I meant it. You don't have to carry the weight of the galaxy by yourself." Elora raised her head, meeting his eyes. "It's hard, Jason. I was trained to be strong, to lead, but after the accident, after everything that happened, I'm not sure who I am anymore. I don't know how to ask for help." Jason took a step closer to her. "You don't have to be a leader all the time. Elora, you're allowed to be yourself, to have moments where you don't have to be perfect. You're allowed to lean on others." Elora's lips parted slightly as she took in his words. There was a long pause, and for a moment it felt like the entire ship had gone quiet. Then Elora sighed softly, her shoulders slumping. "I don't know how to let people in. Jason, I've spent so much of my life building walls around myself to protect who I am, but with you, it's different." She hesitated, looking down at the pendant Jason had given her. "I don't know what it is, but something about you makes it easier. I feel safe." Jason felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He had never expected to hear such vulnerability from her, especially not from someone so strong and powerful. And yet here she was, opening up to him in a way she had never done with anyone else. "You don't have to explain," Jason said. Softly, "I understand. You've been through more than most people could ever imagine. But that doesn't mean you're alone in this." Elora looked up at him again, her eyes filled with something that resembled gratitude. "You've been so kind to me, Jason. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to," Jason replied, smiling. "Just knowing that I can help is enough." The silence between them was no longer awkward but comfortable. There was a connection now, something deeper than mere friendship. It was a bond that neither of them had expected, but both had come to appreciate. As Elora stood there, her hand gently resting on the cane beside her, Jason couldn't help but notice how different she seemed now. She wasn't the cold, distant princess she had been when they first met. She was someone who had endured hardships, someone who had learned to fight not just with her strength, but with her heart. For a moment, Elora's expression softened and she gave him a small, genuine smile. "I'm not sure if I'm ready to let go of all the walls I've built around myself," she said quietly, "but I want to try. I want to learn to trust, Jason." Jason's heart swelled with emotion. "You don't have to do it all at once," he said, his voice gentle. "Take it one step at a time. I'll be here whenever you're ready." Elora nodded, her eyes glistening with something that resembled hope. "Thank you, Jason, for everything." As she turned to leave, Jason watched her for a moment, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He didn't know what the future held for them, but he knew one thing for sure: he would stand by her side. No matter what, the connection between them had only just begun, and Jason couldn't wait to see where it would take them. The Vanguard was traveling through a quieter part of the galaxy now, a region filled with unexplored planets and unknown dangers. The crew had been preparing for a peaceful mission, one that would strengthen their alliance with the Zaltar Empire and ensure a lasting peace. But peace had a way of slipping through their fingers, and nothing ever seemed as simple as it appeared. Jason was working late in the engine room, checking the ship's systems. He had gotten used to the hum of the engines and the constant whir of machinery, but tonight something felt off. The ship had been shaking more than usual, and the alarms had gone off twice in the past hour. It wasn't a coincidence. He glanced at the monitor and saw the problem. A nearby vessel was on an intercept course with the Vanguard. It wasn't a regular ship either. The signature was unfamiliar, and it didn't belong to any known race. Jason's heart sank. He had a feeling this was the beginning of something serious. He quickly tapped into the ship's communication system. "Captain, we've got an unknown vessel heading straight for us." "It's not responding to hails?" A tense silence followed, before the captain's voice crackled over the comms. "Stay alert, Jason. We're preparing for evasive maneuvers." "Get ready." Jason's hand tightened around the control panel. He wasn't the one piloting the ship, but his hands were always on the systems, monitoring everything from engines to security. He ran through his mind, calculating the best response. But nothing prepared him for what happened next. The unknown vessel fired. The first shot hit the Vanguard's shields, sending a jolt through the ship. Jason gripped the console as sparks flew from the nearby circuit. He quickly rerouted the power and braced himself for another hit. The Vanguard wasn't just a diplomatic ship. It was equipped for defense, but it wasn't built for full-out battles. On the bridge, Captain Alvarez was shouting orders, trying to counter the attack. Jason could hear the tension in the captain's voice. "Raise shields, get us out of here now." But it was too late. A second blast rocked the Vanguard and the lights flickered. Jason could hear the alarm blaring through the ship, signaling a hull breach. He grabbed his tools and ran toward the lower decks, moving as quickly as he could. Elora, who had been in the ship's conference room for a meeting, had already heard the chaos. She appeared in the hallway, her face pale but determined. "Jason," she called out, struggling to keep her balance as the ship shuddered. "What's happening? What's going on?" Jason quickly explained. "There's an unknown enemy ship attacking us. I need to go down to the lower levels and see what I can do. Stay safe, Princess." Elora nodded, but there was a determined look in her eyes. "I'm not staying behind while my people are in danger. I can help." Jason hesitated, his first instinct to keep her safe, but Elora was no ordinary princess. She wasn't one to stay hidden when there was danger. "All right, but stay close to me," he said. Together, they made their way through the ship, moving quickly but cautiously. The halls were filled with flashing lights and the sound of alarms. Crew members were rushing in all directions, trying to control the chaos. Jason and Elora reached the lower levels, where the damage was most severe. One of the lower decks had been breached, and the air pressure was fluctuating. Jason worked quickly, fixing pipes and making sure that the ship's systems were still intact. Elora moved beside him, offering what help she could. She had been trained in basic combat and emergency procedures. Though her injury had left her less mobile than before. Despite the chaos around them, Jason couldn't help but admire her strength. She wasn't just standing by and letting others take charge. She was doing everything she could, even in the face of danger. Her resolve reminded him of why she had been chosen to be a leader in the first place. As they worked, another loud explosion rocked the ship. The shaking was more violent now, and the hull groaned under the strain. Jason's eyes widened as he saw the next threat, a breach in the ship's engine core. If it wasn't sealed quickly, it would cause an even larger disaster. "I've got to seal this before the core goes critical," Jason shouted. He turned to Elora. "You need to go back to the bridge. I can handle this." But Elora shook her head. "I'm not leaving you. I'll help." Together, they worked as fast as they could. Jason was focused on the control panel, his hands moving over the wires and circuits, while Elora helped him with the tools. Her presence gave him a sense of calm. Despite everything that was happening around them, there was something steady about her. She didn't flinch, didn't panic. She stayed strong, just like she had promised. After what felt like hours, the engine core was finally stabilized. Jason let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He looked over at Elora, her face smudged with dirt and sweat, but still determined. "That should hold," Jason said, wiping his brow. "But we're not out of the woods yet. We need to get to the bridge and figure out how to fight back." Elora nodded, her eyes flashing with determination. "Lead the way." As they made their way back up to the bridge, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The vanguard had been caught off guard, but they would fight back. They had to. And in that moment, as they ran through the ship, together, Jason realized that no matter what happened next, they were in this fight together. The vanguard shook once again as the unknown vessel fired another shot. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, and Jason could feel the vibrations in his bones. He was no longer in the engine room or the lower levels. He was on the bridge now, standing beside Captain Alvarez and the rest of the crew, watching. As the mysterious ship continued its relentless attack, Elora stood near him, her posture straight, her eyes hard with determination. She had been with him through every step of this crisis, working alongside him to save the ship and its crew. Jason could see the strain in her face, the tension in her shoulders, but she refused to back down. She was a leader, even if she hadn't yet accepted it. "Jason, we need to know what we're up against," Captain Alvarez said, his voice firm, but tinged with concern. "Can you get a better read on their systems?" Jason nodded, sitting down at the console and quickly typing in commands. He was good with tech, always had been. The control panels in front of him lit up with data streams, but nothing he saw matched any known military vessel. The ship was a shadow, hidden behind advanced cloaking technology, and Jason couldn't make out its exact origin. He swallowed, his mind racing. "I can't get a full read, but this ship, it's not just a random attack. Whoever they are, they're targeting US for a reason," Jason said, glancing at Elora. "I think they know who we are?" Elora stepped forward, her gaze intense. "The Zaltar Empire isn't exactly loved by everyone. But this feels different. This doesn't feel like a typical raid. They've been preparing for this." Captain Alvarez clenched his fists, frustration and concern evident on his face. "We need to figure out how to fight back. If they're cloaking, we can't just wait for them to finish us off." Jason's mind worked quickly. He thought back to the Vanguard's systems, to the hidden layers of its defenses that were rarely needed. His fingers moved across the controls, pulling up an array of emergency protocols that had been created for situations like this, when the ship was attacked by an enemy that couldn't be seen. "We have a few options," Jason said, looking up at the captain. "We can activate a pulse disruptor. It's a long shot, but it might disable their cloaking system for a few moments. That's all we need to get a good shot at them." Elora stepped closer to the console, her eyes scanning the data Jason was pulling up. She wasn't just standing by anymore. She was engaged, thinking like a leader, making decisions. It wasn't lost on Jason that the princess wasn't acting like the royalty he had first met. She was a fighter. She had found her place in this fight. "Do it," Elora said, her voice steady. "We'll take that moment to launch everything we have." Jason didn't hesitate. His hands flew across the console, and a series of commands were sent to the ship's weapon system. He could hear the hum of the pulse disruptor charging up, the deep thrum that resonated through the ship's bones. It was their best hope, and it had to work. As the countdown began, Jason glanced at Elora again. Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment, something passed between them. Trust. She trusted him, and he trusted her. In the middle of all this chaos, they had found common ground. They were both in this together, not just because of their duty, but because they had become allies in the truest sense. The countdown finished. A bright pulse of energy shot out from the Vanguard, and for the first time, Jason saw the enemy ship, a massive, shadowy vessel, its sleek design built for speed and stealth. But now that it was visible, the Vanguard's weapons locked onto it, and the targeting systems came online. "Fire!" Captain Alvarez shouted, his voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. Jason hit the button without thinking, and the Vanguard's cannons roared to life. The blast struck the enemy ship's shields, causing an explosion of light and energy. For a brief moment, the ship's cloaking technology flickered, revealing its true form. It was a powerful warship, far more advanced than anything Earth had encountered before, but the battle wasn't over yet. The enemy ship retaliated, firing back with a barrage of energy blasts. The Vanguard rocked with the force of the hits, but the ship's reinforced shields held, protecting the crew. Jason worked quickly, analyzing the enemy ship's weak points. "They're strong, but they're not invincible," he muttered to himself. "We just need to outsmart them." Elora stood beside him, her focus sharp. "We've been underestimated before. Let's show them what Earth can do." With Elora's command, Jason sent the next series of attacks toward the enemy ship, targeting its engines. The ship shuddered as the Vanguard's shots struck true, and the enemy vessel's movements began to slow. The battle was far from over, but Jason could feel a shift in the air. They were winning. The Vanguard wasn't just surviving. It was fighting back. And in that moment, Jason realized that the trust between him and Elora had transformed. What started as a simple gesture helping the princess had evolved into something far stronger. They were partners now, not just in this fight, but in the larger war that was brewing. "Keep pushing," Captain Alvarez urged, his voice filled with renewed confidence. "We've got this." The fight raged on, but Jason and Elora had proven something important. They were a team, and together they could take on anything that came their way. The Vanguard drifted slowly through the cold expanse of space, its hull scarred from the battle with the mysterious enemy ship. The crew had done their best to repair the damage, but there were still systems offline, and the ship's engines hummed with a faint, irregular rhythm. Despite their victory, they were not out of danger yet. Jason knew this better than anyone. He stood in the observation room, staring out at the stars. The quiet of space always felt overwhelming to him. He had come to appreciate its beauty, but he also understood its dangers. No matter how advanced humanity had become, they were still so small in the vastness of the universe. Elora entered the room quietly, as she often did when the ship was still and the hum of activity had quieted. She stepped up beside him, her gaze fixed on the same stars. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of what had happened, the battle, the damage, the close calls hung in the air. "It's hard to believe we're still here," Elora said softly, her voice almost lost in the quiet of the room. Jason turned to her, seeing the same tiredness in her eyes that he felt in himself. Yeah, but we made it, together. Elora looked at him then, her gaze lingering longer than usual. There was something different in the way she looked at him now, something that had shifted since the battle. Maybe it was because they had fought side by side, each of them relying on the other to survive. Or maybe it was because in the midst of all the chaos they had both found something they hadn't expected. Trust. I never expected this. Elora said, almost to herself, when I left my home, I thought I was going to meet strangers, people who would view me only as a princess. But I found something different on this ship. I found something real. Jason couldn't help but smile at her words. You mean me? Elora's lips curled slightly, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I mean both you and the crew. Everyone here is so different from what I imagined. You all don't see me as just a royal. You see me as a person, as someone who has strengths and weaknesses, just like you? Jason nodded. He understood that. The other crew members didn't tray at her like she was untouchable. They respected her, yes, but they also saw her for who she was. And Jason had come to see her in the same way, not as a princess to be protected, but as a strong, capable leader. They were both just people trying to survive, to make a difference. But I can't do this alone, Elora continued, her voice low. I can't keep leading my people if I don't have someone by my side, someone I trust completely. Jason's heart skipped a beat. He had always known that Elora was more than just royalty. She was a fighter, a survivor. But hearing her say that she needed someone like him was different. It meant that she trusted him with more than just the repairs. She trusted him with her heart, her fears, her future. You don't have to do it alone, Jason said quietly, looking into her eyes. We're in this together, no matter what comes next. Elora took a deep breath and nodded, her expression growing serious. We're facing something much bigger than just this attack. I know it. Whoever attacked us, they weren't just looking for a fight. They were sending a message. And I think it's only the beginning. Jason looked at her, his brow furrowing. What do you mean? Elora turned away from him, her gaze falling to the floor as she processed the weight of her words. I think they want to bring down the Zoltar Empire. And if they succeed, Earth could be next. Jason's stomach tightened. So this isn't just some random attack? No, Elora said, her voice firm with resolve. This is a warning. Whoever they are, they want to see the Empire fall. They want to see everything we've worked for crumble. Jason's mind raced. He had known the galaxy was full of dangers, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about fighting for the future of their worlds, for the peace they had worked so hard to build. We can't let that happen, Jason said, his voice full of determination. We'll fight just like we did before. We'll show them that we're not going down without a fight. Elora turned to him, her eyes shining with the same fire he had seen in her before. I knew I could count on you. And now, I know we have something even more powerful than weapons or armies. We have each other, we have trust. The words hung in the air between them, a promise, an unspoken bond that had been forged in the heat of battle. They were no longer just allies in a war, they were partners, bound by a shared purpose. As they stood there together, Jason knew that this was the moment everything had changed. What had begun as a simple mission to repair a ship had turned into something much greater. He had never expected to be part of something so important, something that could change the course of history. But now, with Elora by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would fight. Together, they would face the unknown. And together, they would show the galaxy that no matter how powerful their enemies were, they could not break the spirit of humanity or the spirit of those who chose to stand with them. The days following the attack were a blur of activity. The Vanguard was still in a state of repair, its systems slowly coming back online. Jason had spent hours working on the ship's engines and shields, ensuring that they would be ready for anything that might come next. But even as he worked, his mind often wandered to Elora. She had been more focused since the attack, her leadership skills becoming clearer with every passing day. She no longer seemed like the distant princess who had first stepped aboard the ship. Instead, she had become a symbol of strength for everyone, even though she still struggled with her own doubts. But Jason had seen it, the way she held herself, the way she made decisions, and the way she inspired those around her. He had come to admire her in ways he hadn't expected. One afternoon, as the ship moved into a new sector of space, Jason found himself in the observation room again, staring out at the stars. It had become his quiet place, a moment of peace in the midst of everything that was happening. The stars looked the same as they always had, endless and distant, but today they felt different. He had never felt more connected to them. While Ora entered the room, her footsteps light but purposeful. She didn't speak at first, but Jason could feel her presence beside him. She stood there for a moment, looking out at the stars as well, before she finally spoke. "It's strange," she said softly. "I never thought I'd find myself here, in the middle of a war, in a human ship, relying on someone like you." Jason turned to face her, his eyes meeting hers. There was no judgment in her voice, only a sense of wonder, as if she were still trying to understand everything that had happened between them. "I didn't expect it either," Jason admitted, his voice steady. "But we've been through a lot together, and I think we both know we're not alone in this." Elora looked at him, her gaze searching. "I'm not just talking about the battle, Jason. I'm talking about everything. What we've built here, what we've shared. I never imagined I'd find someone who understood me the way you do." Jason felt his heart skip a beat. Her words, though quiet, felt like a revelation. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about something deeper. Something he hadn't expected to find, but now couldn't imagine living without. "I understand you, Elora, because we're more alike than you think. You've been through so much, and so have I, but we're still standing, and we've got each other. That's what matters." Elora's expression softened, and she took a step closer to him. The space between them felt charged, as if something important was about to happen. She reached out, her hand brushing against his arm in a way that felt both familiar and new. "I never thought I'd need anyone." "Jason," she whispered. "But I do. I need you. And I need to know that no matter what happens, you'll be by my side." Jason reached out, his hand gently touching hers. The touch was simple, yet it felt like a promise, one that neither of them could take back. "I'll always be here, Laura, for as long as you'll have me." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The stars outside the window seemed to fade into the background as they stood there, together in the quiet of the ship. The world around them felt still, as if time had slowed down just for them. Finally, Elora spoke again, her voice steady and filled with determination. "This war, this fight, it's not over. But we've already made it this far. We've already proven that we can face whatever comes next. And I won't face it alone." Jason nodded, his eyes locking with hers. "We'll face it together, I promise." Elora smiled, a small but genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I believe you," she said softly. For a moment, Jason felt as though everything in the galaxy had aligned. The vanguard, the war, the unknown enemies, it all seemed distant now. What mattered was the promise they had made to each other, the unspoken bond that had been forged through their trials. They weren't just two people thrown together by fate. They were partners bound by trust, by shared strength, and by something deeper. As Elora stood beside him, Jason knew that the future was uncertain. There were still battles to be fought, still dangers to face. But for the first time, he felt ready to face them. Because no matter what came next, he had Elora by his side. And that made all the difference. Elora turned to him then, her expression filled with quiet confidence. "We'll win this war, Jason, together." And in that moment, with the stars shining brightly above them, Jason knew she was right. They would win. Not just because of their strength or their will, but because they had something even more powerful, each other.